Hello and welcome to the Raw podcast brought to you by the Sunderland Echo. We're back for another preview podcast. It could be the last one of the season, but Sunderland's still hoping to get into the playoffs, so there may be a few more to go. And today we're going to be looking ahead to the championship fixture between Sunderland and Preston. It's on Monday at Deepdale. So to preview the match, we are joined by Tom Sandells from the Lancashire Post. Tom, how's things?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Yeah, good to have you on. Obviously, could be the last game of the season for Sunderland. It will be the last game of the season for Preston after their playoff hopes were ended last weekend. 4-1 defeat against Sheffield United. And people may have seen that Ryan Lowe had some quite strong comments after that match. He questioned kind of the club's ambition and the mentality of the team. And since played that down, I think yesterday during his press conference. But what kind of shape are Preston in coming into this final game of the season?
I mean, on the whole, not bad. I mean, there's very few teams in the division that have been able to kind of take it as far as Preston have. Obviously, they've not gone to the last day, which is a huge disappointment. Kind of thrown things away, really, in the last 4 games. You worked so hard to give yourself a chance with, after Easter, which seemed to be like a turning point for most teams. And then to get 1 point out of a possible 12 is a bit of a poor do. Lowe was quite, strong in his comments after Sunderland, but it's something that resonated with a lot of fans. You want the manager to come out and be strong. You want the manager, adamant that he's not going to settle for mediocrity. So a lot of what he said was fine, really. He's backtracked a little bit, but not a great deal. The main thing is he said that, he still will not settle for mediocrity, which I think is what a lot of supporters want to hear. Obviously, it would have been an emotional day. Sheffield United, were out drinking most of the week, barely trained, and then beat North End 4-1 to win the playoff hope. So it's, insult to injury, really. A poor day, but you kind of just have to move on. Hopefully, the whole not settling for mediocrity thing shows up this summer. They signed some good players and can put themselves in a position for next season.
You mentioned it there that it is just 1 point from the last 4 games. And before that, I assume there was kind of genuine hopes that Preston could sneak into the playoffs. But where's it kind of gone wrong in the last few weeks with those last 4 games?
See, I don't think there's necessarily like any one area where it's gone wrong. I just think game to game, North End just haven't been the better team. They were beaten by Millwall, where they kind of didn't really take chances. Millwall did. Got battered by Swansea, who were very, very good on the night. Popped them off the park, really. And then, take a late draw against Blackburn, where Preston should have been in front in the first half, didn't score. Blackburn should have been in front in the second half. They did score, and in the end, North End nicked an equaliser. So that's probably a fair result. And then, getting beat by Sheffield United, who were a better team. So, I mean, in isolation, each game, you can't really have too many complaints. I mean, Preston going into the game had lost something like 1 in 11. So they're in really good form going into the last 5. But when you think about it in the Championship, there's not many teams that go beyond that mark. There's not many teams that can go 10 games unbeaten, 12 games, 15 games. P&E would have had to have gone, roughly 16 games unbeaten to get into the playoffs, which is pretty much unheard of in the Championship, especially for a team that's made up the way North End is, because it's not one of the strongest sides in the league. It's not, Norwich, West Brom, Watford, Burnley, Sheffield United, who were able to spend the money to have the squad depth. So, they did well to get close. And another season, you look back at a few games where they could have picked up more points that would have had them in a much comfortable position. But I'm sure other teams can say similar things.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, now they'll be finishing in front of their home fans against Sunderland. So what will kind of the mood be like at Deepdale? How will fans kind of reflect on this season? Looks like it is going to be a top half finish now, unless I think it's Norwich and Watford just below Preston. If they win, they could maybe both move ahead. But how would kind of fans assess this season for Preston?
I think it's kind of just more of the same, really. Preston have been used to mid-table finishes. They've been used to sort of flirting with the playoffs and then not quite making it. It's not always gone necessarily as close as this season. There's been one other season where they've taken it to the last day. Otherwise, they don't really get quite as close as they have done this season. It is kind of progress in that sense that not since Alex Neil's first season at North End, the first season Sunderland were in the Championship. PNE have kind of taken it this close to the playoffs, so they've had a chance, which is more than they've had lately. It's probably another missed opportunity where the Championship probably isn't really that strong this season, and I think a lot of North End fans will be thinking if there's going to be a season, maybe this is it. You don't know how strong the Championship will be next season, who signs who, and things like that. But yeah, I think for North End fans, it's just kind of a bit of same old. They're resigned to the fact that they're a Preston North End fan, and this seems to come with the territory at the moment.
Mm-hmm. How would you expect them to set up on the final day? Obviously, they're playing against the Sunderland side who have to win to get in the playoffs. Preston, perhaps the pressure will be off. So how do you think they will approach this game?
I think they have to approach it, as one that they need to win. I think they'll go for it properly. I don't think there'll be like loads and loads of changes. I could be wrong, of course, but it's not the impression I got from Ryan Lowe. And especially when, as I mentioned earlier, you've taken a point out of a possible 12, you kind of have to end well. They did that last season. Middlesbrough came to Deepdale. They needed to win, and they had a chance of getting in the playoffs, and they got beat 4-1. So PNE do have previous of kind of playing when there's nothing to play for. I think it is important to end the season well. Fans don't want to have to spend the whole summer thinking about a defeat on the last day, or it'd be, if they get beat, it's 1 point from 15, which is a really poor way to end the season. So yeah, I think they need to end strong. You always think about season tickets for next season, all those sorts of things, and ending well. So hopefully it'll be a decent day at Deepdale for that.
Mm-hmm. And it looks like Ryan Lowe, he's often played with a back three and wing backs. We did when he was at Plymouth, and it looks like he's kind of carried that on at Preston. Is that how you expect them to set up on Monday?
Yeah. I think maybe once or twice they haven't started with three at the back. It is Ryan Lowe's system, which I don't mind. I don't think it's ever a case of, there's times when they've been struggling to score. People have questioned the shape. Maybe you should change it up. But I don't really think it's necessarily shape that causes teams issues. It's as much about the personnel and the tactics within that, the runs that they make off the back of the shape and things like that. So yeah, they'll set up with three at the back with wing backs. It's more a kind of a 3-1-4-2. You've got a sitting midfielder that stays just in front of the back three, and the wing backs are able to get forward when they want to. Most likely Brad Potts and Alvaro Fernandez either side. Alvaro Fernandez is really good to watch, really attacking. Brad Potts is a bit more attritional, a bit more dependable, in the defensive side. Really good defensively and tracks runners and puts a real good shift in. And then you'll have a deep midfielder, two centre midfielders, potentially Daniel Johnson and Josh Onmer, who are two ball-playing midfielders who could be quite good to watch on the day, that like to get forward, and then probably Cannon and one of Delap or Parrott up front.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you mentioned the lack of goals there. Just looking at the league table, and Preston, one of the lowest scorers with just 45 goals this season. Obviously, looking back to the game that Sunderland played against Preston at the Stadium Light, it ended in a goalless draw. So there obviously has been a kind of lack of goals in the team. Maybe from the outside looking in, you could say perhaps that's negative or looks defensive. But how has the style kind of been this season?
Yeah, it's not necessarily a defensive style. I think it's the start of the season, it looked that way a little bit because they were keeping loads of clean sheets, but it also didn't paint the full picture, the fact that they were missing loads of chances. Emil Rees got 20 goals last season in all competitions. He did his ACL at the turn of the year. He hadn't quite hit his goal scoring form. He'd kind of been chipping in here and there, not quite really got up and running yet, but then he did his ACL. Ched Evans then started getting in the goals, and then he was ruled out injured. Troy Parrott missed 4 months of the season, although he hasn't been scoring either side of that anyway.
How has he done, Troy Parrott? Because he was a player that was on Sunderland's radar back in the summer.
Yeah, he's done all right. Not enough of a goal threat, really. Doesn't keep himself high enough up the pitch. Likes to kind of drop deep and be a bit of a foil, but he gets in some good areas, and it's just kind of finding that end product, whether it's maybe taking a little bit too much time sometimes to try and carve out the perfect opening, or maybe a wrong choice. He's obviously not the finished article, which is why he's at PNE, which is why he's on loan away from Tottenham. But he's done okay. Like I say, the season has been quite disrupted, but North End kind of in their shape more need more number 9s than kind of a foil, a false 9. Ched Evans is probably the closest thing to a player that likes to drop deep, but even he still pushes up higher than, say, Parrott would, and he's more of a battering ram to bring other people into play. So he's done okay. I mean, you can't hide the fact that he's only scored twice, 3 in all competitions for North End, and as a striker, it's not enough, but it's only his kind of second time back at this level, so I guess he'll learn quite a lot from the experience.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned Tom Cannon there, a player that I'm just looking at his stats. He's scored 8 goals in 19 championship appearances on loan from Everton, and there was one spell where he was pretty much scoring 1 goal every game. So just how important has he been, and who are the kind of other key players for this Preston side? Yeah,
he's done really well. I think it took him about 9 games to get his first goal, so it shows what his goal scoring has been like since. It took him a while to kind of get the first goal, but it didn't take him a while to play well. It was one of those where both him and Parrott were playing at the time and neither were scoring. But you looked at Cannon and you can see there's a player in there, just something about him, whether it's his gait, the way he takes his first touch, the way he's so direct. You can see that there's a player in there, and it was only a matter of time. He got his first goal and then kind of hasn't looked back since. He's a real goal scorer. He's got pace. He's calm in front of goal. He's exactly what North End needed last season. They had Cameron Archer on loan from January onwards. This season it's Tom Cannon, and credit to Ryan Lowe because they're 2 really good signings that have really worked out. So yeah, Cannon will be one of the main threats. Alvaro Fernandez on loan from Man United at left back. He's a good threat as well. He likes to get forward. I mentioned earlier Johnson and Onomer, if they're on song, North End can tick along quite well, but Peony are not really the side where you go, if you stop him, then you stop the team, because they don't have those types of players. They don't have the players that drop a shoulder, throw in a step over and can beat a man. The likes of Roberts, Diallo, Clark that like to do that and get you off your seat. North End don't really have those players. Lowe's spoken about wanting that sort of player in the summer, but in truth, PNE haven't really had that type since Aidan McGeady. And, I'm sure you know how far ago that was. So, yeah, it's more of a team performance that PNE need. And there are obviously, like I said, Fernandez, Johnson, Onomer, Cannon. They're the types that you kind of look to maybe finish off the move or provide that little bit of spark in the move that may lead up to a goal. But it's not necessarily a case of if you stop this one player, you can stop PNE.
You mentioned a few of the Sunderland players there in Amad and Patrick Roberts. How much have you seen of Sunderland, and how do you think the two sides will match up? Obviously, that there was that goal of straw that we've mentioned back in October.
Yeah, it wasn't exactly a classic, that was it. Yeah, I've seen bits of Sunderland, to be fair, and every time I've seen them, they play some really good football. I think it's underrated how possession based and how it's not just lump it long. You've got the tricky players towards the top end of the pitch that you're able to utilise.
You don't have the striker to lump it long.
Yeah, there's that as well. I think they're quite good to watch. I don't know quite whether they're ready for the playoffs as such, but I don't get why not in the same token as if you're close enough to get in there, the table doesn't lie and you deserve it. I think for me, seeing that sort of 3 behind the strike of Sunderland is exciting. I mean, as someone who covers Preston who doesn't have any of those types of players, and Sunderland have 3 kind of winger type players that are able to beat someone and create something. The Patrick Roberts goal the other day. Yeah. Preston don't have the type of player that can do that. So that gives you an edge. It gives you that, you're in the 90+ minute and you need a goal and someone pops up with it. So, yeah, I think having that in Sunderland's side is a huge asset. Again, whether they're able to convert and get into the playoffs, who knows? But I think first season in the league, to take it even to the last day is a very good achievement.
Mm-hmm. One of the downsides of that, though, is that Sunderland don't have a lot of height in their team. Against Watford last weekend, 2 corners for Watford, and it ended with 2 goals. So what are Preston like from set pieces?
Yeah, I wouldn't say they're prolific, but they have scored a few times from set pieces. There was a last minute winner against Reading that kind of stemmed from a set piece where Brad Potts ended up headed it in. I know for a fact that in the past this season, Ryan Lowe has kind of gone, we may struggle from open play here, but we feel like we can harm them on set pieces. So I'm sure it'll be something that they're aware of, something that Preston try and target, but theory is one thing and practice is another, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. And just finally, what's the kind of latest team news? I was just reading Lowe's comments before we came on. I think there was a few maybe doubts with Robbie Brady and Ben Whiteman. What's kind of the latest with the team news at the minute?
Yeah, Ben Whiteman is looking doubtful. Robbie Brady is more likely. Whether he'll be in the squad or not, I don't know, but he's definitely more likely than Ben Whiteman. Ryan Lowe said he should be on the grass before Monday. North End, in truth, are quite short when it comes to players at the moment.
So is Sunderland.
Yeah. Well, like I mentioned earlier, Emil Rees is out injured. Ched Evans is out injured. Greg Cunningham is out injured. Captain Alan Brown is out injured. And then you've got Brady and Whiteman. Bambo Diaby is currently suspended. So they are a bit short on numbers at the moment, North End. But, still have enough to put out 11. And it just offers a few spaces for younger players and youth players to get on the bench, which I suppose isn't a bad time to get a bit of experience when, your season is effectively over anyway.
Mm-hmm. Well, just finally, Tom, before we let you go, we just usually finish by asking our guests just how you think the game's going to pan out and just for a quick score prediction.
I think it'll be interesting. I think North End will be quite determined not to kind of go out with a whimper. They normally perform quite well in these sorts of scenarios. They got badly beaten by Blackpool early on in the season, and then they went on a really good run of form. Same with Burnley, went on a really good run of form. So I think after this disappointment and probably a rocket from Ryan Lowe, I'd expect a better performance that we've seen over the last 4 games. I think, a sold-out Sunderland travelling end is going to be difficult to, it's difficult for that not to have an impact on the game. So I can't see Sunderland kind of going out with a whimper either. I think it'll be close. I'll go 2-1 Preston because I'm not going to bet against North End. But I think we could be on for a decent game. Last game of the season, everyone wants to finish strong. Yeah. Sunderland obviously going for the playoffs. And, there'll be quite a few inside deep there. So hopefully it should be quite good.
Yeah, it should be good atmosphere. And as we mentioned before, Sunderland have to win. And I think they've about 6,000 fans travelling there to Preston on the final day. So there's a lot on the line. I think Sunderland I'll go for a 2-1 Sunderland win because they just have to win. And there's, as Tony Mowbray was talking about yesterday in his press conference, it's not like a draw could be enough. They have to win and then just hope either Millwall or Coventry drop points. So I think Sunderland might edge it. I'll go for 2-1 and then they'll have to just see if the other results go their way. But Tom, thanks a lot for coming on today's episode. And if you like what we do here at the Raw podcast, you can consider subscribing on our YouTube channel or wherever you listen to your podcasts and leaving a review. For all the latest SAFC news, you can head over to the SAFC section of the Sunderland Echo website to find the thoughts of head coach Tony Mowbray. And we'll also have more build-up ahead of Monday's match at Deepdale as Sunderland take on Preston, where we'll also have live updates, reaction and analysis on the final day of the regular season. So once again, thanks a lot for listening to the Raw podcast.